Welcome back to the IE427 garage, everybody. Today, I'm working on a bunch of loose ends around the car. I'm trying to get a bunch of stuff taken care of to get this car first started. So I'm working on the mechanical throttle linkage from Mike Forte. I'm working on the gas filler in the back of the car to get the clamp all squared away on that, because the gas tank that we have was not pre-drilled for the clamp. I'm working on some Footbox modifications so that I can keep Mrs. IE427 moving forward on all the heat and sound mat. And I want to go through all the wiring, just like the battery cable wiring, the alternator wiring, and make sure I tighten everything up on that end so that it's not one of those last minute things I got to take care of before we try to first start this thing. So come right back and I'll start taking you through some of the stuff that I'm doing. Okay, I'm going to start on the driver's side Footbox, and I've been working this afternoon trying to get the aluminum where the accelerator pedal is kind of pushed over. This is a common modification on the Mark 1s through the Mark 4s. And it's just trying to make more room for your feet. That's just kind of the bottom line. But what I've found is that, especially with a small block Ford engine in the car, there's quite a bit of room that you can gain by pushing the panel over and then putting some type of metal in place to hold it in that position. So this is what I've done. And if you go back to some of the videos we did on, I think the 25th anniversary car and the Texas prototype, we did a very similar thing. There's more room in this car to push the panel over because this is just a small block Ford engine. If we were doing this in a Coyote, you've got to start being careful, because if you push this over, it kind of bows the panel up in here, and then you're going to start getting dangerously close to the headers, because the headers are right up here on the other side of that panel, and so are the heads. That's why we've got that point right there on the Footbox. That's kind of where the head for the engine rests near. And so the headers and everything are kind of in that area, so you want to make sure that you're not making contact with that stuff. In a Mark IV with a small block, you've got more room, so you can really push that thing over. We gained probably about 1.5 inches at the centermost portion of that panel. And you can see I just took some 040 aluminum, I stuck them in the brake. You can use the store-bought aluminum angle. What you have to be careful of is that you can't get it down into this area right here, because it won't conform to the 4-inch round tube like the 040 aluminum will. So I bent that in the brake, and then once I got it close and I got a couple of the rivets in, then I went ahead and I persuaded that corner down so that I could get it pop riveted in place. And you can see it creates quite a bit more room. So what I'm going to work on next is I'm going to work on getting the mechanical throttle linkage from Forte's Parts Connection hooked up to our accelerator pedal and getting it all adjusted. Now, the owner installed it, It's all installed in the car. I'm just adjusting it because he had a it's not a carburetor, like a carburetor block off that was shipped with his engine so that no debris or anything would get inside the intake manifold. We've taken that off, and what I'm trying to do is adjust that carburetor and linkage so that he gets, you know, full rest on the pedal, so it'll drop back down to idle, and wide open throttle so that the carburetor blades are completely open. And so that's what I'm working on getting adjusted on the linkage. Now, I'm also changing some of the hardware on this. Mike supplies it with all fine thread stainless steel bolts that go through the 2-inch dash tube and kind of give you your pivot points. I'm replacing those with black oxide bolts in the same thread and pitch, same length, just so that they blend in a little bit better. Now, one of them is going to be behind our under dash panel on the driver's side, but the other one is out just above the spot where the lower firewall is. And so while it'll probably be covered with carpet, I want to be able to get to it if it ever needs to be maintained or removed or whatever. And so what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to change that bolt out as well to a black oxide bolt, because it'll have a button head top to it. And then we'll go ahead and we'll pop a hole through the heat and sound mat so that it goes on top of the heat and sound mat. We may even do that for the carpeting, but I'm less worried about the carpeting. If we carpet over it, you'll be able to tell where it is, you know, just by running your hand over it. And if you have to take it out, you could make either a small cut in the carpeting and back it out, or you could just try to fold the carpeting back. I'm more inclined to do the same thing and just make a hole in the carpeting and thread the bolt through and into the rod end that allows everything to kind of work on the engine side. But we'll see. I'm going to pull it out to let Mrs. IU427 go ahead and put the heat and sound mat in place. But I haven't decided what I'm going to do when it comes to carpet. So we'll just kind of play it by ear. But I'm going to work on that next. So hang on and I'll show you what I'm up to. Now keep in mind, I did not get instructions with this throttle linkage kit from Mike. I'm sure I could contact Mike and I'm sure he'd send them to me through email, but it's a pretty basic setup. And so what I'm trying to do is two things actually. I'm trying to make sure that I get full throw for the carb and for the pedal, and I'm trying to get them at the right ratio. And Mike gives you like infinite adjustment to take care of both of those. So what you're going to want to do is, once you get it close, sit your butt in the car and push the accelerator pedal from its rest position as far down as it's going to go, and see if that's the length of throw that you want. Because the shorter the throw on the accelerator pedal, the more severe that the carburetor blades are going to open up all at once. So you want it to be reasonable. And so I've tried to give this as much pedal throw as I can get while still maintaining full open and full close on the carburetor. And what you're going to want to do as well is verify that you have full throw. So you want to make sure that the carburetor comes to full rest against the stops. And so make sure your idle screw is where it needs to be for its position closed. And you want to make sure that the carburetor opens all the way up to the point where it hits the stop like this. Okay? And as I was saying, Mike gives you really a bunch of adjustment on the lever end. So this whole entire slot is adjustable. And you can see where I've got it right now. I've got it all the way at the top. And even with it all the way at the top, it does not contact the firewall. And I was a little worried about that at first, but it didn't become an issue. So now I'm convinced it's working just as it should. So start at the carburetor side. Once you get the the pedal basically where you want it. And then there are set screws right here at the bottom that you can tighten down, and that's what clamps these adjuster arms in place. And you can make them a little bit, I don't want to say a little bit loose, you can make them snug to where you can adjust them while you're playing around with the adjustments both on the top and the bottom. But you want them firm enough so that when you push the accelerator pedal down inside the car, that it's not basically just turning on the shaft. You want to make sure that it's actuating the arms the way it's supposed to. So inside the Footbox, you can see we've got another arm, and it's right here. And you can see the position I've got it in is pretty far forward, and now you can get a good view of that set screw right there. And so by having it in the position that I have it in, it, like I said, it's giving full throw for the carburetor. That's full open right there. And we still have more adjustment left if we want it. You can also get some fine adjustment out of the rods. The rod ends that Mike gives you for these have stop nuts on the ends, and so you can loosen those stop nuts, and you can adjust the rod a little bit too. If you're getting down to the very end and you just need a little bit more adjustment, you can use the rods to adjust it. But I found using the actual adjusting arms is far easier because it gives you immediate results, where kind of farting around with the rods, you know, it's going to give you incremental adjustment. It's not going to give you any substantial adjustment where you can make really quick adjustments when you're trying to dial it in. And then down here in the Footbox, you can see I've got the pedal at rest so that the three pedals, the clutch is obviously higher. We've got a cable actuated clutch, so we need enough throw on the cable so it'll engage and disengage the clutch. So the clutch pedal is always going to be a little bit higher. And then we've got the brake pedal, and then the third step down is going to be the accelerator pedal on the far right. And you can see we've got plenty of adjustment here, and we just hit the stop at the back of the Footbox when we're at full open throttle. I really didn't have to fuss around with it all that much. I don't know if the car owner just got lucky when he put it together, because he really couldn't adjust it because of that block-off plate that was in there between the intake manifold and the carburetor. But it was surprisingly close. I mean, at most, I had to adjust each of the arms on the adjuster, probably a half an inch, maybe 3/4 of an inch. And I just did have to change the rotational position of the arm inside the Footbox quite a bit to get the pedal where I wanted it. But it's still, in the position that he had it, it still gave pretty much close to wide open throttle. We just needed just a little bit more, and we've got that now. So I think what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go to the rear of the car, and I'm going to work on getting that clamp around the outside of the filler tube for the fuel tank. All right, I've gotten some mixed signals from different guys about this fuel tank filler. Now, this is not a factory 5 supplied fuel filler. This came from someone else. And when I put a question up on my Facebook page, or our Facebook page, asking why it didn't come with the clamp, not everybody, but one guy told me, oh, mine came with a clamp. Okay, well, ours didn't. And then on top of that, the tube is beaded. So it's got a beaded opening on each side, obviously, so that when you put a hose over and put a clamp, it's not going to work its way loose. But with it being beaded on both ends, you can't put the clamp over it, because the clamp, the factory, stock Ford clamp that goes over it, is designed with a notch in it, so it'll go over the Ford style filler neck. And this didn't have that. It was beaded all the way around, and so what I ended up having to do is I ended up having to cut the bead off the end of it, and then put the clamp down onto the tube, and then re-bead the filler tube. And I've got it all in. It took way longer than I had hoped to get this done, but you can see we also had to drill the fuel tank right here And you want to make sure, if you're going to drill the fuel tank, that you're on the outside of the seam weld so that you're not going to have any leakage of fuel. And then you can see we picked up a Ford OEM clamp for the fuel filler neck. And then we've got an actual Ford OEM gasket, the donut seal in there as well. We've just had better luck with the Ford piece than we have with some of the lesser expensive replacement, like part store seals that go in there. So with the combination of those two parts, we should be pretty much done back here. The length that I had to cut off the end of the filler tube on this end was not a whole lot. I think in total maybe it was about 3/8 of an inch. And the filler tube that we have to go from here to the Le Mans cap is more than enough in length, so we're not going to have any problems making the length in there. So I think we're going to be all good back here. So I'll probably catch up with you guys tomorrow. I'm not sure what I'm going to be working on in the car. I'm probably going to concentrate most of my energy on making sure that all of our battery cables, all our big electrical cables are connected and doing what they're supposed to. I also have to round up some vacuum hose because we need to hook up our vacuum advance on our distributor to the bottom of the carburetor that we have. And I'll get into this tomorrow, but there's a post on one of the Facebook pages. I think maybe it's the Hot Rod page. Guys complaining about the car is real lazy. And I think one of the issues, I put a question to him, what type of carburetor is it? Is a mechanical secondary or a vacuum secondary? We'll talk more about that tomorrow. But vacuum secondary carburetors don't work well with a car that only weighs 2,000 pounds. So it doesn't build up enough vacuum to open up the secondaries. So we're going to work on probably getting that vacuum line from our distributor to our carburetor. I'll show you how to find out which vacuum port you need to hook your vacuum advance to, depending on how you want the car to run. All right, next day. Heat and sound mat continues. However, in my quest to get this car to first start, I'm working on all of the loose ends that I either knew about or didn't know about. I'm just going over the car, giving everything a second glance so that we're ready when the time comes to turn the key and start this thing up. So I think I talked about this earlier. I had forgotten to run a ground over to the passenger side of the car for our two outlets, our USB outlet and our 12-volt outlet that are going to go in our under dash panels. I have taken care of those. So right in here, I have a ground stud that we had welded on. And so that has our ground that I have run over to the passenger side of the car. I went ahead and tightened down the locking nut on that as well, so that all those grounds now are secure. And then over here where we have, I think it's the two radio powers. So the radio memory and the radio switched power, I have taken, let's see if I can get this out from under here. So these right here. I have taken the radio power, which is just a 12-volt switched source, and I've got the ground right here, ready to go. And then I've got a small loop in the wire right here that brings a larger wire here from that ground stud and ties together, so it's a loop, for the radio memory. And so this is going to go to our 12-volt outlet. The switched power is going to go to our USB outlet. And I think I've said this previously, the reason that we're doing switched power to the USB outlet is because the USB outlet takes 12 volts and turns it into 5 volts for the USB outlet. There's a transformer inside of that little outlet. And so if it has constant power, it's constantly drawing power because it's always transforming that 12 volts into 5 volts. So keep that in mind when you wire these things. anything that's going to have a transformer in it is always going to draw power, and so you're going to get this parasitic power loss or power drain in your car. And if you're not maintaining it with a battery maintainer, you're going to find that the car is not going to start if it sits for too long, because it's got all of this power being drawn out of the battery when the car sits. So that's the reason that we do that on a switch circuit. So I think I'm probably going to end the video here, because everything that I have left to get this thing ready to first start is all of the incidental stuff. Like, I've got to put the side pipes on because I don't want to start it with open headers. I have to, obviously I've got to put fuel in it. I need to check all of the fluid levels. So I need to check the oil in the engine. I know I've got coolant in it, but I'm going to double check that the coolant level is where I want it. I have to check the transmission level, the transmission fluid that's in the transmission. I don't know that it has fluid in it. I think it does, but I'm going to check it. If it doesn't, I'm going to fill it. You do not want to start your engine with the transmission attached without fluid in the transmission. Those gears are not designed to run without fluid in them. So even if you have the car in neutral, the input shaft is going to be spinning with the engine. So make sure you have transmission fluid in your transmission before you do your first start. I don't have fluid in the rear end housing right now. I may even put that in. We're not going to be go-karting the car here anytime soon, but since I'm going through and making sure that all the fluids are full, I might as well go ahead and put that fluid in and be done with that as well. So that's probably what I'm going to be working on the next video for the King's Cobra. But again, I think this is where I'm going to end the video. So I've pretty much gone through the entire car, electric wiring wise, and double checked all my connections. And so everything that's related to getting this car to first start is done. So I'm pretty confident now we're not going to have any electrical issues when we go to start the car. The last thing will be to just put the dash in and put the connectors so that we can read the gauges. So as always, if you guys are enjoying the content here, please do the like, the share, the subscribe, all that kind of stuff. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.